All right. I'm wearing my Old Kings. I have the Old Kings hat somewhere. Is it up here? I can't find the bloody thing. Of course. Of course I can't. 'Cause it's the one hat I'm looking for. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams have stayed in the same spot as last week in the power rankings. I told you guys. With the way I'm doing the power rankings now, there won't be any huge swings. I want this to be not static, but consistent. It's the one thing that people talked about a lot, and I said, you know what? That's fine. It's fine. So at number 30, 1. You're like, hey, we're number 30. We moved up a spot. Now Ottawa's still 31. Nothing happened this week to move them ahead of 31. They're not at 32, which is good because I have these Beatles magnets and this nice Excalibur magnet that my wife picked up while we were at the Excalibur Hotel in Vegas. And they're all three of these Vegas magnets are waiting to be 31, so that Beatles Cirque du Soleil would be ahead of a team in the NHL. We haven't reached that point yet, but Ottawa, you're on the clock. The Cirque du Soleil guys they haven't lost, so I could put them on there. Number 30, down 2 spots from last week, Arizona. Arizona can't score. And that's it. And the fact that Schmaltz was put on IR just cinches it. This is a rough time right now for Arizona. And it's too bad because Arizona had really come a long way early on, and it looked like, hey, this year they're gonna fix it. Nope. Number 29, same spot as last week, is Detroit. Detroit's showing signs of no, they're not. Not really. Part of what's helped me keep these power rankings in order is that the teams that are at the bottom are playing like they belong at the bottom. And Detroit, they got that win over Nashville, but all those losses ahead of time kind of builds them up some negativity on the board here so that I can't just bump them up. Number 27, up 2 spots from 28, up 2 spots from last week is St. Louis. Yeah, they're 28th. They move up 2 spots. They move up because they can score goals. They can't protect leads. Neither can Detroit, though. Detroit doesn't like having a lead. So, yeah, they move up a couple of spots. Don't plan the parade yet because Tom Dundon hasn't got it so that 28 teams make the playoffs yet. That was sarcasm. Number 27, dropping 3 spots from last week, is Philly. Philly, the goaltending issue remains an issue. There are a lot of things that remain an issue with Philly, but the goaltending / defense are the number one thing. And adding Mike McKenna on waivers doesn't really fix it. It just adds more miles to Mike McKenna and puts more teams on his resume. I believe they said he's wore 21 different jerseys as a professional now, including the Vancouver one that he never wore in game. And it's to the point of ridiculousness. And we'll see how much more ridiculous things get from McKenna because Neuwirth comes back. McKenna will probably get waived again. All right, watch him end up back in Vancouver. Number 26, staying in the same spot as last week, LA. Now, LA might have moved up due to their result against the Oilers, if not for the fact the Oilers are in full and complete meltdown. So, that being taken into consideration, LA stays in 26th. Yes, they're ahead of these teams. And they have been showing some signs, but they're not winning often enough to really make a dent in their playoff hopes. They need to win with some more regularity than that. Number 25, also struggling to win with any kind of regularity. Staying in the same spot, Florida. Do you know how relieved I was to look at this bottom row just as an example and go, you know what? That's basically the same as last week. Good. No wild changes. And for Florida, yeah, they're still having their struggles. They're mighty struggles that seem to just continue. Tonight was another example. They're at home. At home means they probably don't win, but they can lose it in overtime, so it looks better on the record. Number 24, moving up 3 spots from last week, is New Jersey. So New Jersey has moved up. Now, if they can go into Vegas tomorrow and beat Vegas, they look even better. Now, they don't have a whole lot of hope of getting into the playoffs at this stage, but they're ahead of Philly for me on that front, I guess. And yeah, they move up a few spots, so that's not too bad. That's a healthy move. The biggest risers this week, I had 2 that rose 5, 1 that rose 4, and then a bunch that rose 3. I had 1 that dropped 6 spots, and 1 that dropped 4. And those are the big risers and fallers this week. So again, I'm very happy with the consistency of it. Number 23, down 3 spots from last week. Edmonton. Edmonton was definitely hurt in their rankings. They would have dropped 1 spot from last week, but that loss in LA, that's a gut punch. And again, it's not that they lost, it's how. And it's how dysfunctional the team looks. It's how mad Connor McDavid looks right now. He in that game tonight, he did not look happy. So I know he's been putting up points. I know he's getting back into the scoring race, but the Oilers have got to figure this out. They've got to do some kind of a reset. And when you've already fired your coach, now I know people are going to say, well, fire Chiarelli. Right, and what's the new guy going to do? So you fire Chiarelli and you bring in, I don't know, Scotty Bowman comes in. Just throw a name out there. What does Bowman do that is going to fix this season? The answer is probably nothing. So Chiarelli, regardless of what happens with Edmonton, I figure he's there till the end of the year. End of the year, all bets are off. Number 22, down 1 spot from last week. The Rangers. The Rangers have trouble putting together wins. They do know how to lose in overtime. That helps. But having won 3 of their last 10, it's hard to move them up at all. So 22 is where they reside. And again, they move down even though Edmonton dropped below them. Number 21, moving up 2 spots from last week. I'm not enthused with Chicago and seeing them as a team that's going to make the playoffs, but man, at least they've got out of that funk they were in, and they seem to be putting something together here. Now, I don't think it's a playoff spot, but they're competitive every night. They're doing very well, and I do put them ahead of the teams that are below them on this power rankings. I think they're playing well. Not a playoff team, but they're playing well. Number 20, down 3 spots from last week, is Vancouver. Another East Coast swing and another swan dive for the Canucks, who I almost had 16th last week, left them in 17th, and I'm glad I did because this week showed unless they're playing Ottawa, they can't beat anybody, which is not good. This was a rough road trip, very, very rough road trip. I'm not happy with the World Juniors because they caused an extended road trip that the Canucks did really, really poorly in. Yeah, there's no way around that. Number 19, staying in the same spot as last week, Anaheim. So I'm sure Ducks fans are like, well, where are we? We've been losing. Yeah. The frustrating thing with Anaheim is they're losing, but they're looking pretty good in some of those losses. So they're losing, but they're not losing by a lot, which makes it kind of worse. Because you come out of the game going, well, we played pretty well. You can get a point. And so for the Ducks, they have a chance tomorrow night at home against these guys to start putting at least 1 win together and then work on more. But I thought they played well against Tampa. They just didn't beat them. And at the end of the day, results are what matters. So I left them here. I didn't move them down. But they're in danger right now. This has not been a good run for the Ducks. Number 18, moving up 4 spots from last week. So one of the big risers is Carolina. Carolina's won 3 in a row, I believe, or 3 or 4 in a row. And not like gut-busting wins or anything, but enough to move them past the teams that were in front of them to this point on the countdown. Carolina, not a playoff team, but they haven't given up. And when a team shows fight, it's kind of nice to see. And they seem to have fixed some of the issues they had early in the season where they're shooting from everywhere and they're generating 40-plus shots a game. Just ridiculous. They've got that part under control. The coaching seems to have gotten better. As long as McElhinney's in net, I think they're fantastic. I think they're good with him. He's having a really solid run right now. Mrazek, I'm a little more nervous about, but Mrazek seems to be getting better as well. Number 17, dropping 2 spots from last week. Colorado, I don't know. I don't know. The Central is the division we looked at and we said, oh yeah, no, the Central's going to be great this year. I don't know about that now. I really don't. And Colorado's one of those teams that I look at and I have some concerns. I have some depth concerns. And it's not just up front. It's blue line. It's kind of just an ongoing issue with them. So for Colorado, the concerns cause me to be not happy at putting them at 17, but they belong there. And we'll see if they can turn it around. Maybe they need the All-Star break, although a number of their players are going to be going to the All-Star game, right? 2 that we know of, but it could end up being 3 if you vote in Landeskog. Number 16, staying the same spot as last week. Kind of proven why I did and this is why. Last week I dropped them from 9 to 16, and I said that was a market correction. I didn't see anything in Buffalo's game this week to move them up or move them down. I said, you know what? Middle of the road is right about where they belong. I did have them at 15 coming into tonight, and they dropped back to 16 with the loss to the Bruins. And so that's where they're at right now. Which, of course, has probably some Toronto fans going, wait, we'd play Boston in the playoffs if they started today? What? Why is that? No. They probably wouldn't be very happy about that. But if it makes them feel any better, I have some concerns with Boston as well. That's why I've been very slow to move Boston up the charts, even though they've been playing pretty darn well over the last month. And I've had people tell me I have Boston too low. Well, Boston's top 15 at the very least, right? They were 13 last week. Number 15 moving up 3 spots from last week. And a win in Toronto will do that for you. And then they avoid the trap game against the Ottawa Senators. Minnesota Wild at 15. They had a good week. I don't know if they can maintain this momentum and get to a playoff spot. But they had a solid week. And you can't ask for much more out of Minnesota than what you got from them this week. But they're going to have to keep that up. Because, again, while Anaheim's doing their best to make sure they drop that wild card spot they've been holding, you can't bet against somebody else ahead of them getting hot, or one of the other teams in the conference getting hot. Somebody's going to. So Minnesota kind of has to keep it up. But this week they did pretty darn well. Number 14, same spot as last week. Now, Dallas had 7 points in their 4 games at home in this homestand. So they won 3 out of 4 at home. I'm still nervous. I will bump Dallas up if they can win on the road. Tomorrow they're in Winnipeg. If they can go in and beat Winnipeg in Winnipeg, I will start having some faith that the Dallas Stars this year are different than last year's Dallas Stars. If they go into Winnipeg tomorrow and they lose the game like 4-1, 5-1, I'm going to kind of shrug and go, yeah, that's kind of where I expected it to end up. I want to be wrong. This is a case where I absolutely want to be wrong. Number 13, and these guys dropped. Not because they had a bad week, but because the teams that jumped past them had a good week. And I kind of agree with the coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets that right now there are some concerns with their game. They're at 13, so they dropped 4 spots, which is still top 16, which means they're still playing well enough to be a playoff team. But I do have some concerns with Columbus. Pittsburgh now is a growing concern league-wide. The Islanders are becoming a growing concern as well. And Columbus has to be very careful with that. Columbus has to watch their spot in the standings, because somebody in the East is going to miss the playoffs who would not have missed the playoffs in the West. That's my prediction right now. The end of this year, the number 9 team in the East, that team's fan base is going to be apoplectic because of the fact that somebody in the West made the playoffs with less points. And it could be as much as 6 or 7 points. At the rate things are going right now, it could be 6 or 7 points difference between making the playoffs in one conference and the other. Which, is that fair? Yeah, I'm fine with it. That's the way it's been my whole life, that somebody misses the playoffs who probably should have made it, and somebody makes the playoffs who probably should have missed it. But that's the way the whole system works. Number 12, staying in the same spot as last week, Montreal. They would have jumped up this week. That loss to Nashville dropped them back down to 12. So again, the way that I do the power rankings now, there are no huge drops and jumps. So if this team wins, they jump 2 spots. If this team loses, they drop 2 spots. I'm not doing that anymore. Montreal for me at 12. I'm comfortable with them at 12. I think they've been playing well. I think the loss at home against Nashville hurt them. And I think that kept Nashville. If Nashville had lost that tonight, Nashville comes in at 12. Nashville was in for a drop. But with that win tonight in Montreal, with Arvidsson being back, I do anticipate some upward momentum for the Nashville Predators yet again. And the fact Saros had an amazing game in Montreal, that helps the Nashville Predators case as well. Number 11, moving up 2 spots from last week, is Boston. So Boston's on a 4-game winning streak, and they've jumped a grand total of 2 spots. That's proof that I'm doing this completely different than I did it before, and I kind of like it better. I have to be honest, I do. I like it better. I know there have been some concerns, and some people have said, I don't like the way you're doing it now compared to before, but I do. It seems to be a more stable system, and I like it better. Whereas Columbus fans are going to say, stable, we dropped 4 spots. Boston has been playing very, very well. The win at home against Buffalo, my only concern with that was, as I mentioned in the review tonight, it felt like they quit at times. They were kind of sitting on the lead. I don't like teams that sit on the lead. I don't. And when Bruce Cassidy took over last year, it was attack, attack, attack. It was so much more fun than when Claude Julien was running the team. And it was just, all right, we got the lead. Everybody sit back. Drove me nuts. It's like, don't sit back. You're going to blow it. Ah, crap, you blew it. Number 10, staying in the same spot as last week, is Nashville. Not a great week. Not a horrible week. Decent week. 10th spot. The Predators are dangerous. They're going to be a very dangerous team going into the playoffs. Because at this stage, they've kind of dropped below the radar at least a bit. I think with the struggle they've had at midseason, if they end up coming in at, say, 3rd in their division, people aren't going to be picking them for the cup. They're going to be underdogs, and I think Nashville thrives with being an underdog, and I think that would be the most dangerous spot for them. What I'm trying to say is this record right now may be the best thing that's happened to the Predators in a while. But yeah, so the Predators with that win against Montreal, they prevented themselves from dropping down. They would have been 12th, Boston would have been 10th, Montreal would have been 11th. Not huge differences, but again, that's kind of how things would have worked out. I got to pause, do something else. Alrighty, so that being done, we're up to number 10. Now, people are like, what did he have to go and do? And sneeze, get my other book, do some stuff with the other video I was uploading. Number 9, moving up 2 spots from last week, Islanders. It's been quite the run for the New York Islanders. It's been very, very impressive, and it's been a gradual climb up the power rankings. I have them at 9. I still, and I have no problem saying this, I still have my concerns about the Islanders being able to keep this up. But you know what? The comeback win against St. Louis is another example of how they just make wins happen. They're playing very, very well right now. And they absolutely belong in the playoffs according to this run. Now, we're halfway through the season, so there's still 40 games left for them to potentially fall out. Things can happen, but for right now, yeah, no, they're one of the best teams in the league. Now, number 8, this was a tough one. I'm going to be honest. They had a rough week. They had a rougher week than the other teams in the top 8. And I had to drop teams down in the top 8 this week who actually had pretty good weeks, because there were 2 teams that had, they had better. So number 8 down 6 spots from last week, and it hurts. It hurts to have Washington down at 8th. But I couldn't keep them up. I couldn't justify having them at 3 or 4 or 5 because in my eyes, the teams that they were ahead of, if I'd had them in 5th, are playing better than them right now. The Capitals against Dallas, for instance, they should have won that game. And I know Hudobin stood on his head, but they should have won that game. And that's kind of the trick when I'm doing this too, is that there are still those judgment calls, right? So the board has stayed pretty static throughout, but for me, Washington drops here because of the fact that they have lost 3 in a row, 2 in regulation, 1 in overtime. And these teams didn't have that issue this week. One of them kind of did, but then saved themselves. So there was a team that was in 8th coming into tonight that jumped back up based on the fact that they played a pretty high up team and did pretty darn well. Number 7, this accentuates just how tough it is. Number 7, dropping one spot from last week, is Vegas. It's amazing because Vegas didn't lose. Vegas didn't lose this week, and they dropped a spot because they got passed. So for people who are keeping track at home, they'll realize that Pittsburgh and Calgary are the teams. It was Pittsburgh in 8th and Calgary in 7th last week. So because they both moved up, Vegas dropped down, even though Vegas didn't do anything wrong. Vegas won. And tomorrow night, they're at home against New Jersey. The trick is, it's New Jersey. So if they lose, people will go, ha, Vegas, they're not as good as we thought, as you said they were. But if they win, people go, that's New Jersey. Look at their road record. They're crap. So it's been a bit of a soft schedule for Vegas. And, it's tough for me to move them down. It's only one spot, and they're not the only one that's moving down one spot, I can tell you that. Dropping one spot from last week. Even though they beat the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight, San Jose drops one spot because they were down in 8th coming into tonight. But a win over Tampa, I will say that jumps you back up. And it is an impressive victory they had today, and they held Tampa to 20 shots. That's impressive no matter how you do it, no matter who's in Tampa's lineup. That's impressive. So for me, San Jose at 6th, I'm fine with that. Number 5, also dropping a spot from last week. Bit of a rough week for the Jets. And they have a hefty test of their own coming in tomorrow because Dallas is not a great road team. I may have mentioned that in a video before. Maybe. It's possible. The Jets need that win at home. The Jets had that loss against these guys. The Jets have had their struggles, and they struggled mightily against the Penguins last night, which is why the Penguins are ahead of them. It is interesting because the Jets at one point this week had actually moved up, and then no. So while they're pretty high up in the overall standings, the underlying numbers, and when you look at it, Winnipeg could be in for a bit of a drop soon. Number 4, dropping one spot from last week, which is bizarre. But there's Toronto at 4. And again, they drop one spot because Pittsburgh and Calgary had great weeks. And Pittsburgh's winning streak has been absolutely intimidating. And for the Flames, I don't know. I'm starting to really, really buy it. And it started with that absolute massacre they got over San Jose, and then they've just cruised from there. Mostly. I know not completely, but mostly. And it's not that the Leafs are doing anything wrong. The thing is that they did shut out Vancouver, but it was the 3rd time Vancouver's been shut out in 4 games. So you kind of got to weigh that. And for that reason, at number 3, moving up 5 spots from last week, is Pittsburgh, which will have people saying Pittsburgh should be number 1, which would be crazy. Crazy. Yeah, Pittsburgh keeps getting better during this winning streak, which it's sort of like a perpetual motion machine getting faster. That's not supposed to happen. That's not how physics work. But Pittsburgh's really making it work. They seem to just keep getting better. And Crosby's getting stronger, and Matt Murray's playing fantastic. And I know there are people who say, oh, Murray sucks. Fine. Believe that if you will, at your own peril. But Matt Murray doesn't suck. And neither do the Penguins. Now, I'm not going to claim that the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to win the Cup this year, but they are getting into that form right now. They are playing like their playoff lives are on the line right now. Unlike last year, where they meandered until, mid-January about, and then they picked it up. Not this year. They are playing very, very well. Which means that down the stretch, if they continue with this kind of a run, down the stretch, you can rest some guys when you need to, and you don't have to kill yourself to get into the playoffs and win 16 out of 20. So Pittsburgh may be better rested going into the playoffs this year than last year, which is bad news for the rest of the NHL. At number 2, moving up 5 spots from last week, as of no surprise, it's Calgary. No surprise. The Flames are putting together this incredible run. And I don't know how far it goes. And they had a couple of bad weeks. That's how they ended up in 7th because they had a couple of bad weeks. This was a pretty good week. And for being, I believe right now, I believe they're first in the West. I don't have any reason not to have Calgary up at number 2. When you look at the West, so the East is definitely the stronger one, and this will surprise no one. I have Tampa at number 1. Spoilers. Tampa's been number 1 for, I think this is 4 or 5 weeks now that I've had Tampa at number 1. It's been a while. But you look at the East. You've got Tampa, Pittsburgh, Toronto, Washington here. Now, you've got Winnipeg. I can't argue Winnipeg's better than Calgary. I can't argue San Jose's better than Calgary based on the result when they met head-to-head. I cannot argue that Vegas is better than Calgary. Nashville? No. So now you're getting down to Dallas. So, yes, they have to be tops in the West. They have to be the highest-rated Western team, which puts them at least at 4. And I put them past Toronto. I didn't feel Toronto had as solid a week. I kept them ahead of Pittsburgh, which is where they started the week, because both Calgary and Pittsburgh, in my eyes, marched very, very well together. And Pittsburgh I had to have beyond Winnipeg, because Winnipeg lost to them badly. So Calgary went with them. Calgary had an excellent week. Now, what happens next week for these teams, we'll see. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how this board looked this week. I watched it every day this week. Paid really, really close attention. Not just when games were done, but really close attention to where everybody was. I kept track of where they were the Saturday when I did the power rankings before that. And I'm quite happy with where teams are right now. I think it's close. And what I've also been doing too is that my power rankings are very close to what you'll see on almost any website right now. So I'm happy about that too. I'm not ecstatic, but I'm pretty happy about it. So that being said, the switcheroo is due because, again, and why I do the switcheroo for people who might be new. I switch the power rankings at the end because there are people who skip to the end. When they skip to the end, they just skip to the end, and then they want to argue with me about where I have teams. And it's aggravating when you've uploaded a video, and 2 minutes after it's gone live, you have somebody saying, this is crap, you've got these teams in these spots. And it's like, you didn't listen to me explain. I've just spent 27 minutes explaining why every team's where they are. So, to punish, you just do the old-fashioned switcheroo. There we go. Let's do this. There. Nah, that's not good enough. That goes there. That goes there. You're going there. You're going there. And I don't think this through. I just go ahead and move them around. All right. I pose, and there we go. So as you see this week, I have Boston in first because I learned this week that Bobby Orr played for the Bruins and Cam Neely, two of my favorite players. I grew up with Bobby Orr. We're good friends. I don't know why he never told me he played for the Bruins. The Kings, because Gretzky played there. The Flyers, because Bobby Clarke didn't have teeth. The Blues are in fourth place because they wore that really nice throwback tonight, and I can't not bump them up 25 spots for that. The Senators are at number 5 because I have been informed about the number of Stanley Cups the Ottawa Senators won in the 1920s, which I found out from my own history series, which is available on this channel. I highly recommend it. The Senators, an amazing history, so they have to be at least 5 based on that. The Canucks are at 6 due to the fact that they lost 5-0 against Toronto, which puts Toronto at 16 because I'm petty. Buffalo's at 28 because they lost to Boston. I'm petty. Tampa, get your jersey and your colors done. Come on now. Toronto colors and Detroit jersey. That's just not going to work. Winnipeg's at 31 because look at this. Look at this logo. This logo is just not like it's a plane flying on a leaf. What? Why? Winnipeg's not in Canada. I can't understand why the Leafs on it. So that just baffles me. Pittsburgh's in 27th because Mario sucks. I have Montreal in 20th because Guy Lafleur sucked. And Calgary's in 11th because they didn't win enough this week. San Jose's in 12th because they beat Tampa, but Tampa's 26th, so that really didn't help them any. So there you go. There's the power rankings for January 6th. Technically, I'll write January 5th, but it is past midnight when I'm finishing this, so technically it's January 6th. But I'll put January 5th on it, and we'll just keep it between us. So there you go. There's where everybody finished. And let me know why I'm right in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And yes, I also have to do the Sunday preview tonight because they have matinee games tomorrow. I will talk to you again soon.